Hi, I'm Mr. Ramage, and I want to help you prepare for your end of course exam in American history. So, I teach in the state of Ohio, and at the end of the year, we have a state test or end of course exam on American history. Now, you may be living in a place where that's not the case, but you probably have an American history class and you might need a little help with it. You can still watch these videos too. We're going to start from the very beginning, and we're going to look at Unit 1, which is titled Founding Documents. And the first standard in Unit 1 is about the Declaration of Independence. So let's check it out, see what we need to know. The Declaration of Independence elaborates on the rights and role of the people in building the foundations of the American nation through the principles of unalienable rights and consent of the people. So these are some important phrases we need to be familiar with. So let's create a little context here about the Declaration of Independence. So the first phrase, rights and role of the people, what does the Declaration actually say people's rights are, and what role do they play in the government or in terms of what the Declaration's talking about? Well, the Declaration says basically that people have the right to overthrow a government if it fails to uphold and to protect the rights of those people. If the government violates a social contract that exists, well, then the people have the right to get rid of that government and replace it with one that will hopefully protect the rights that people have. So there's some phrases here from the Declaration that I pulled out, but essentially the Declaration says the colonists have the right to overthrow the government. Here's why we're overthrowing the government. And by the way, we're creating a brand new country called the United States of America. Now, in terms of the principles of inalienable rights, you should probably already know these, right? These are God-given rights that cannot be taken away, like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which Jefferson puts into the Declaration. But more importantly, we need to understand that it's the government's job to protect these rights. Their part of the social contract is to make sure that these rights are protected. Now, the phrase consent of the people means that the people agree and support the actions of this Continental Congress who's issuing this declaration, that these actions are being done with the support or consent of the people living in the colonies. Now, not everybody did, but that's another lesson for another day. So it's important that we understand these phrases and provide a little context to be able to answer these questions without any trouble. So let's take a look at some of the test questions that have been asked previously in the state of Ohio about this standard. The first one reads, the Declaration was strongly influenced by the Enlightenment ideas of the social contract and natural rights. So below we've got some excerpts, and then what we need to do is look at natural rights and social contract. We need to be able to identify which of these excerpts talks about natural rights and which of them talk about the social contract. Well, what do we need to know to answer this question? Well, we need to go back to our knowledge of the Enlightenment, specifically our good buddy John Locke, the English philosopher. And we're not going to do a deep dive into John Locke, but we should be familiar with him, and we should especially be familiar with his main two ideas that he wrote about. The idea that people had God-given natural rights, and then these rights cannot be taken away. They are inherent. They are inalienable. He also wrote a lot about the social contract. Now, that's an agreement between the people and the government, where the people agree to give up some of these rights in exchange for protection and security and safety, and that the people empower the government to exist in order to secure and to protect those rights. Okay, all that's in the Declaration. So if we look at these excerpts and we understand what a social contract is, we understand what natural rights are, the answers are pretty simple. So for the first one, it talks about absolving their allegiance to the British Crown, dissolving their political connection. That's talking about a contract. The second one also mentions the phrase political bands, which have connected them with another. Again, we're talking about dissolving a relationship, a political contractual relationship. And the last one, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's our key phrase for natural rights. So when you break it down, this is a pretty easy question, looking for those key phrases and terms. All right. Before the American Revolutionary War, the British government passed laws to increase its control over its American colonies. This is following the actions of the colonies, specifically after the Boston Tea Party, which brings us to what's called the Massachusetts Government Act, or the Intolerable Acts. Okay, this is where the king wants to put the colonies under strict control and bring them to heel and exert his authority over them. So the colonists refer to these as the Intolerable Acts, and the king specifically goes after the colony of Massachusetts. So this is from the Massachusetts Government Act. From and after August 1st, 1774, no meeting shall be called by the selectmen, officials, or at the request of any number of freeholders, landowners, of any township, district, or precinct without the leave, consent of the royally appointed governor. So essentially what this says is that the colonists cannot have a meeting without an approval of the royally appointed governor. So the colonies can't meet, the officials in the colony cannot meet without the permission of the British governor, of the royally appointed governor, the person the king appointed to be in charge. Okay, so do we need to know a lot for this question? Not really. We should sort of know what's happening in the colonies. We should know that after 1774, the king tries to exert more authority. So the question is, why did colonists view this section of the Massachusetts Government Act as an infringement on their rights? Because it limited their ability to assemble. So again, no meeting shall be called without the approval of the governor. That means they cannot meet when they want to. They can only meet when they are allowed to. Another question, going back to some more excerpts from the Declaration. Which excerpt from the Declaration describes the Enlightenment idea of natural rights? So we've seen this in previous questions. We're looking for that key phrase, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So this is something we're going to see many times over. You'll notice a trend where these questions begin to repeat themselves or look very, very similar. And as long as we know natural rights, and as long as we can recognize that quote, this, again, should be a very easy question for you. And we have a two-part question with, again, another excerpt. So the trend of these released questions shows us that they are going to be using language from the Declaration in these questions. So this is a grievance. That is a major part of the Declaration of Independence, where Jefferson lists a number of grievances or complaints against the king in order to support the argument for independence. He has called together legislative bodies. So who is the he? Well, that's King George III. That's who we are referring to. We're putting the blame on him. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. So how does this grievance support the American colonists' case for independence? Well, what is the grievance talking about? Legislative bodies would be our elected officials. He's calling them together at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant. So maybe he's calling meetings of people 100 miles away, which would take a long time to get there. It would be difficult to do so. We don't have our records and materials and resources that we need for the meeting. It's going to cost us money to do so. And he's essentially forcing them to comply, okay, through this fatigue or kind of wearing them out. So if we look at our possible options down here, how does this fit into the case, right? These legislative bodies having to meet in uncomfortable and distant positions. It made it hard for the American colonists to have a voice in their own governance. So the grievance is, hey, you're making this really difficult for us. We can meet, but you're forcing us to do so farther away from where we typically meet. You're making it hard for us to have a voice in our government. You're making it difficult. You're making it challenging. So that is the grievance here, and this would be your answer. Making it hard for the colonists to have a voice in their own governance. Now, the second part of this question says, how does the statement you selected in Part A show a violation of an Enlightenment principle Okay, so now we're talking about going back to a principle or a main idea of the Enlightenment. So, one of the big ideas we've already talked about from the Enlightenment is the social contract. So, if the king or the British government is making it difficult for the colonies to function, or limiting their rights or infringing upon their rights, that means they are violating the social contract that they have with those colonists. So, in a Part A, Part B question, you got to make sure that you are matching up your answers and connecting them together. Another question with another grievance and another excerpt. So again, the trend is we're going to probably see a question about a grievance. We're probably going to see some excerpts. So the Declaration lists a number of grievances the colonists had with British rule. So what are the grievances here? For cutting off trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. Which ideal of democratic government do the grievances in this excerpt demonstrate? So we have a grievance over trade. We have a grievance over taxes. We have a grievance over the benefits of a trial by jury, which is and should be a right that you possess. So if we look at these possible answers, which one stands out? I hope you selected B. The government has a responsibility to protect, not to violate the rights of its citizens. If the government is taking away those rights, treating us unfairly, it's violating our natural rights. And lastly, we are going to look again at some grievances, looking at some excerpts from the Declaration. Two of these grievances clearly demonstrate a violation of the Enlightenment principle of consent of the governed. Now, on a lot of questions, they will provide you with some definition, some context, and some clarifications. And in this question, they really do give you a really good description of the term consent of the governed, the idea that the government gets its authority from the people that it governs. So for this question, we're going to click on the two grievances that describe violations of consent of the governed. Now, this one might be a little bit more challenging. So you have to consider the part where it says the government gets its authority from the people, which is essentially through some form of representation, which means voting. So I would look through these five very carefully and look at which of these five talk specifically about laws or representation or legislation or some form of legislative assembly or group. So that is our focus, the consent of the governed. So if we look, we're going to see that the first one says he has dissolved representative houses repeatedly. So that means he has taken away our ability to represent ourselves through the people's consent, right? So if the people vote for these people to serve in this representative house, if he is taking away the power of the people to be represented, that is a violation of the consent of the governed. And the other correct answer says for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government. So that would again talk more about the consent of the governed. So the people are creating these charters, passing these laws, electing their representatives. Taking that away violates the consent of the governed. You're now ruling over us without our consent. You've taken away the groups that we have consented to and replaced them with something else. The other three options don't specifically talk about representation. They talk about things like putting the troops, cutting off trade, ravaging the seas and coasts. So those are definitely grievances, definitely things that the people are upset about, but they don't specifically deal with the consent of the governed. If we step back, take a look at our standard that we looked at the very beginning, we need to know, well, what's in the Declaration? Why was it written? What are some things that we should know about it? And then focus in on the rights and role of the people, the principles of unalienable rights, and the concept of the consent of the people. And if you can do that, you should definitely answer these questions with relative ease. Thanks for watching this video. Good luck on that end of course assessment, and I hope you learned something.